Now, we're talking about Lugia's theme, which is more or less specific, at least it's different in the dub. Does Lugia have a theme in the Japanese version of the movie?
He does. It's not really called Lugia's theme. I believe it's kind of called, I've seen it translated as like the heartbeat of the earth or the earth moving. So I think it's definitely associated with Lugia, but I think officially it's more the sound of nature. So, but yeah, no, Lugia definitely has its own theme, and the theme that is, present when it activates its song that Melody plays on her flute. So I think it's more treated as the sound of the ocean that Lugia sings, and not so much Lugia's song specifically. But it's kind of similar in a lot of ways, though, I think. I mean, they're both kind of using that same kind of scale and the same similar basis and kind of that minor key, I guess. So I suppose it's not that ridiculous that they sound similar, but I do kind of feel that the English version was inspired by what came before.
And I suppose while we're here talking about Lugia's theme, we should say that, there is sort of this, they are separate pieces of music. The score came first, and then that riff was used to sort of build on to create the power of one song. But, it's really created sort of a memorable combination there. It's hard for me to say whether the power of one song helped keep the Lugia's theme popular, or if Lugia's theme helps tie into the power of one song. They're kind of joined there, I guess is the word I'm looking for. Do you have any thoughts in that regard?
I agree. There's something kind of wonderful about that in that, so many times a movie will have a song in its end credits, or a song that's kind of associated with the movie, but they'll try really hard to push it so that that song can stand on its own as a single. And I think there's something wonderful that this song, because of the riff at the beginning and everything, it's almost indistinguishable from the movie. Like, you can't hear the power of one without hearing that riff. Well, as it was recorded, obviously you could do a remix, but like, I don't know. I really like that choice to have it be like, this is a song for the movie, and it's going to tie in every possible way and not be something a little bit separate.
Does that make it seem more cohesive in a way?
Yes, and more of a deliberate artistic choice, because it feels like a decision that isn't made from a business standpoint, like it, rather than focus on the single being able to appeal to, the world who is not listening to Pokemon. This is going to be something we create specifically for Pokemon. And it's going to, even the music is going to herald back to the little riff that was playing in the movie. It feels like a very artistic choice and has a lot of integrity. And that kind of speaks to me. Like, I always, even if the choice is different or weird or I don't like it, I love when creators can make a clear and defined choice about something. I don't know. How do you feel about that?
Well, basically, I feel like the two are more or less inseparable. They are, like I said, one is it originated in the score and then was used to create this song, but they're such a unit that one brings to mind the other, and I think it makes the second movie feel more like a purposely designed package than the first movie does, where they had to sort of piece together the soundtrack from what they could find, what they had submitted to them. And like I said, We're a Miracle was an excellent choice, and I'm glad it was there. But having this opportunity to sort of tie everything together, I think, makes the second movie, to me at least, feel more as a work and as a product, feel more integrated.
Yeah, definitely a creative vision almost. Would you definitely say all the other tracks on the second movie soundtrack kind of follow that? Like, seem to have been chosen with a bit more care and choice than maybe the first movie soundtrack?
In some ways, yes. This is getting to another point I wanted to talk about maybe a little bit later, is that I think the overall quality of the music on the second movie soundtrack and the first movie soundtrack are roughly equal. There are maybe some songs on each one that outshine the other a little bit. But I do kind of wonder, and I guess we'll probably talk about this a little bit later, is whether or not the power of one is actually so prominent that it causes what I like to call, to paraphrase Lord of the Rings, the one song to rule them all problem. And I do kind of wonder if maybe this song was so prominent that it may have overshadowed some of the other stuff. But getting back to the soundtrack itself, the second movie soundtrack is much more, a lot of that, more of the songs were written for the movie. They brought in some very skilled people to write the songs that were original. They re-edited or rewrote some other stuff to do that. So it's more of a produced soundtrack rather than purely curated like the first movie. Very few of the songs are written for it. The second movie, more of them are. I think there are valid points and valid arguments for both approaches, but I think the way it resulted in this particular song is just absolutely excellent. They had a very good writing team. They had a very good singer, obviously, in Donna Summer, and it just all sort of fit together there. I
agree completely. This is both the English and Japanese soundtracks for this movie are my favorite of all the Pokemon movies. Like, just as a whole, I just think both of them were just so well done and well chosen, for whether the songs were curated or just slightly edited, or whether they were written specifically for the movie. Like, everything came together for a reason, it felt like. And I just think the listening experience overall is so much more than I get from any of the other soundtracks.
Well, you had mentioned earlier about remixes, and actually both of these songs have at least one remix. Twat Mod does have something called the ANSNY Bounce remix, which has it's extended, it's got sort of it's more electronica based. Do you like that remix? What do you think about it?
I like it as something that I might listen to on occasion and be like, oh, that's interesting, or I might dance to it. I don't really like it as a Pokemon song, but it's common for singles to, have remixes like that. So I don't dislike it, but I don't feel it's an improvement over what I wanted from the song, which is, to kind of reawaken those feelings that I get when I watch the movie. And I don't feel the remix adds anything to that in the way that there's at least one of the Donna Summer Power of One remixes. It's the second one that
I should point out. Let's go over.
Yeah, let's go over that.
Power of One has basically 8 different official remixes. The way they were distributed is there's 4 of them are on a CD that you could get at the time, and then what they had is there's also a 2 LP, as in long playing record set that has 2 remixes on each side of the 2 records, so 8 remixes total. It has everything from that CD plus 4 additional tracks. So that's the remixes for the Power of One, and you can divide them into basically 2 different groups because there were 2 different remixers, and most of it follows along those lines. So there's Jonathan Peters, who is a very well-known remixer, DJ, stuff like that, did a series of remixes. And then there's Tommy Musto, who did really one main remixes that's iterated a few different ways. But in any case, the Jonathan Peters is much more, again, an electronica type of feel, sort of something you would hear in a club or something like that. There's a couple different variations, especially if you take a look at the vinyl version, has about 4 or 5 different sort of iterations there. My personal favorite of the ones he did is the Sound Factory remix. He does, or did at least, a number of what are called Sound Factory, where he would use a lot of percussion type sounds. And the thing I like about the Sound Factory remix of The Power of One is I think it's more suited to sort of, if you wanted to pair it up with the action elements of the movie, like when they're going across the big plain of ice that's there, and other stuff like that. I think that would be well suited. It's also worth noting that in some of these remixes, the vocals are sped up. I don't think that it's actually a secondary recording, like they didn't record a slow and a fast version. I think they used computer technology to speed up the vocals for the remixes to make them a little more dance-friendly, I guess you could say. Do you have any particular opinions on the Jonathan Peters series of remixes?
I listened to his club mix. I kind of agree with you. Like it kind of seems to fit, like, you know, the more action oriented side of the movie. And that's kind of what I was getting at with the Toi et Moi remix, is that I don't really get anything out of that one. But this Jonathan Peters remix of The Power of One, I feel that does add a little something to it. Not that I would replace it, obviously, but like I do feel that I get a different dimension of the song and its connection to my movie out of that particular remix, more so than, like, say, the Tommy Musto one.
Yeah, let's talk about the Tommy Musto one.
That one's interesting.
Yeah, to me, it's really just one remix. There's a couple different sort of, like, compartmentalizations of it, I guess is the best word I can think of. But what it is effectively is it gives it sort of this 70s disco dance club vibe that you would have gotten back then, which is kind of, you know, given the artist, Donna Summer, that was when she sort of rose to fame, was in the 70s with, like I said, a lot of disco-type hits back then. So it's sort of, it brings sort of the adult audience to the movie, if they heard this version, sort of brings them back to how they were probably introduced to Donna Summer. Which is just kind of an interesting choice on Tommy's part there to get that type of a sound out there. And they've got some good instruments in there, and they've got some backup singers that they added, and it's kind of a neat production. Yeah,
there's something very like light and summery about it, which almost doesn't seem to fit like the opening lyrics, but it's such an interesting sound.
Yeah, so that was kind of a neat choice there, I have to say. I do think I kind of prefer, if we're going back to the first movie, there's a number of remixes of Don't Say You Love Me. I think I kind of prefer the diversity more there, but I like both sets of remixes, and I'm really glad we got stuff like that. I'd love to have like more official remix type stuff of Pokemon songs in the future. Hopefully we get a chance for that sometime.
Definitely.
I should also point out there's also like some sort of commercially unreleased remix I was able to find a YouTube video for. I wasn't as super excited about it. It's okay for what it is. I don't think the editing's quite as tight in that version that we found. Well, I suppose while we're talking about Power One, we kind of talk about sort of the lasting cultural impact, which you might not have expected, you know, right away. But as time has gone on, we've come to realize some of these things there that have gone on. Now, back in the year 2000, it was used by NBC for some of their end-of-day highlight reels from the Summer Olympics that were in Australia. And that strikes me, in retrospect, as actually a very good choice. You know, the song doesn't explicitly mention Pokemon, so you can use it in other contexts. But what really kind of strikes me about it is, first of all, it has a very sort of triumphant feel to it as you listen to it. So it works very well with sports highlights. And the fact that it is A, Donna Summer song, and B, a Pokemon song, means that it appeals to both older people who are familiar with Donna Summer's previous works, and also younger people at the time, at least, who would have been into Pokemon. Do you kind of agree with that assessment?
Definitely, yeah. And yeah, with it being kind of just that triumphant feel, it does work perfectly for the Olympics, and lyrically as well. Like, the Olympics is one time where you believe we can have world peace for 5 minutes. Like, what better time to have a song about many individual people coming together and you know, building unity. Yeah, and it's a perfect fit that I didn't realize until you brought it up does work across multiple generations.
Yeah, so that's what happened there. And knowing that, it wasn't part of the Olympics proper, the Olympic Committee. It wasn't using any of the ceremonies or anything like that. It was just something NBC used at like the end of the day for some of their highlight reels. And that eventually led to it appearing in some places you might not have expected. I guess we got to talk about the elephant in the room, and actually also another animal.
Yes, I was
specifically a donkey.
Yeah.
No insult intended to either, but it turns out that, 4 years ago, we heard lines from this movie repeated at a political debate and in some speeches by a man by the name of Herman Cain. And, I guess you got to give the song something there. Did that kind of surprise you when you found out about that?
It totally did, and it totally caught me by surprise. I hadn't been following his campaign or anything, so I almost wonder if it wasn't a good move, because once that hit the internet that some politician was quoting Pokemon, suddenly he got a lot of attention. Yeah, if it was a deliberate move in that sense.
We'd have to talk to a speechwriter to find out why that actually got put in there, if he suggested it, because he thought it was associated with the Olympics, which, given our information there about it being used in some of the highlight reels, makes sense. If you never saw the movie and you just were watching highlights and you saw this song that worked really, really well, and
very inspirational.
That might be the connection you made there, not knowing. If you didn't have any kids or grandkids or nieces or nephews who had you see that movie, or if you weren't aware of the context, even if you heard it on the radio, you could make that sort of connection there. So we're not endorsing any particular politician, and this is not the last one we're talking about here in this discussion, but it is kind of interesting. Do you think this song might have kind of an appeal to politicians in a certain way?
It being a Donna Summer song, certainly they are more of an age to have appreciated her music. They would have been listening to her, and to them, that's a sound that I think that they would more quickly grab for than, say, young millennials might. And again, if they did hear it with the Olympics, as you say, then it's just an inspirational song. It's not associated with any pop culture-y thing. So yeah, in hindsight, it might not have been the weirdest choice for, some moving lyrics to inspire my campaign kind of a thing. But for us who know it is a Pokemon song, it's the weirdest choice.
Quite possibly, yes. And I alluded to earlier that there was another politician. So one thing we found out from my interview with Mark Chait is that Herman Cain wasn't the first politician to have an encounter with that song, it seems. Back in probably 2000, that would make the most sense, there was a fundraiser for the Democratic Party in New York, and the people who would organize it had picked that song out. And one of the people who was there, presumably for her 2000 Senate run, was Hillary Clinton. And Mark Chait was there, and they brought in a singer from, I believe, Broadway to do the actual vocals part. And after the speech, Hillary went up, talked to Mark, and told him that your song has just totally summed up the entire speech I'm about to give. That's amazing. Not those exact words, but it is kind of interesting that this song has become inspirational in that kind of way, more so than, well, in a more broadly applicable way than, say, the original dub Pokemon theme, which obviously is very inspirational to people who grew up then, but outside of that context. This, on the other hand, they wrote and produced a song that seems to just have that kind of broad appeal, which is, like I said, all the way from, everyday people to world leaders, is just remarkable. Really, it is.
Yeah. I mean, there's probably many different factors, right place, right time, Donna Summer being so recognizable, getting into the Olympics probably helped its recognizability in other areas. But there's just something about Pokemon, too, that, because Pokemon has always spoke to world issues, and that's always been a theme in the anime and in the games. Sometimes in cases like Black and White, getting very political, in a, non-partisan way. So I think there's something wonderful about this song being able to be used in a variety of situations, say in the Olympic context, or being able to appeal to people who are supposed to be at least making decisions for our countries or, trying to bring the world together to solve problems. Like, there's something about that is very special to me that, this song is the one that was able to speak to us when we were young and watching the movie, and also older people who are thinking about something completely different.
Yeah, I definitely think that other than the original English dub theme, as far as English Pokemon music goes, this is probably number 2 on like the most important list there.
Yeah.
And I think this is going to have at least some longevity. It may just be eventually just a footnote in some sort of future Wikipedia or whatever that some politician running for office referenced this song. But I think it's going to have some legs for time to come. Like I said, even if it's just as kind of a footnote in political history or in mass market culture history or something like that.
Yeah.
Well, we've sort of compared and contrasted that. These are very different songs. They have very different tones. Even compared to the songs from the first movie, the 2 songs there, while they have different sort of musical styles, they are kind of going for the same effect. These ones, very different. Mm-hmm. Do you have a particular preference of which one you like better, either as a song or think works better in regards to the movie? How do you feel about that?
I definitely think The Power of One works better for the movie. Hands down.
Yeah, I kind of have to agree. I don't think Twatma is a bad song by any means. I do like listening to it when it comes up, wherever. But in terms of being, a movie ending song or a Pokemon song, I really do have to say that The Power of One just blows Twatma out of the water. There's not really any contest here. Like I said, Twatma, not a bad song. But it definitely gets overshadowed when you put the 2 together. So I guess this time, unlike last time where we had a virtual tie where we really couldn't decide between the 2, this time, at least as far as, like I said, being a major Pokemon song, being a movie ending song, I think there's a fairly clear delineation here, and one of them clearly outshines the other. It sounds like you agree.
I do. As you say, Twaimwa, definitely an important, beautiful Pokemon song. I love listening to it, but if, stranded on a deserted island and one song has to encompass Pokemon, or rather Pokemon 2000, Power of One, easily. Although there are a lot of other songs on that CD that also are very fitting. But yeah, Power of One easily beats out Twaimwa, unfortunately.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that sort of wraps up our main discussion there about the 2 songs there. Thank you very much, Anne.
Oh, thank you. So much fun.
This has been Stephen Reich from the pokepress Studios in Madison, Wisconsin, on the phone with Anne, discussing the merits of the Japanese and English ending themes to the second Pokemon movie.